Hello and welcome to the IMCO weekly webinar. I am Jake and I work with IMCO and I'm also today's panelist, bizarrely. So Kathy, who would usually be hosting this, is on her way. She has had a bit of an internet issue, so she will be back with us, I'm hoping, in just a few moments. Otherwise, I will be asking myself and answering my own questions, which would be a little bit strange. But I don't think we're going to get to that. So in the meantime, if you're with us now, just pop who you are in the chat, where you're from. It'd be great to get a flavor who we've got listening in today, from wherever you are in the world. And maybe you've read the blurb about who I am and what I spend my time doing, and maybe that's raised some eyebrows, some questions. If you've got any questions off the bat, stick them in there, and that'll give Kathy and I a little bit of, I guess, a little more information on where we might take this. We're going to do quite an informal thing. Kathy and I, we work together with IMCO. I do a lot of IMCO's kind of web stuff. Not that that is particularly in my wheelhouse, but I think out of us on the IMCO team, seemingly I'm the most qualified. So that's what I do. But I spend most of my time working as a primal health coach. So I have one-on-one clients, group classes, corporate schools, that kind of thing. So let us know where you're from, why you're here today, what you're hoping to get out of this webinar, and hopefully we'll get the show on the road shortly with either Kathy joining us and hosting us properly, or me working my way through it in some sort of way. So hang tight, stick some things in the chat, and we'll get to know each other a little in the meantime. Sorry, just communicating something there with my wife, who also works with us here at IMCO. So you might be wondering, why is a primal health coach working with IMCO? Well, my wife is a midwife, and so obviously she is a good fit for maternity healthcare. But as a primal health coach, I'm all about holistic health and setting people to live life really well. And obviously, if you are living life well in the grand scheme of health, then maternity health obviously is going to be benefiting from that as well. So that's a little bit of where we'll be going this evening, and the reason behind why we're going there. So I do have a bit more of an insight into maternal health than a lot of other primal health coaches would, given that my wife's the kind of person who may or may not talk about placentas at the dinner table. So, you can kind of get a feel of where we're going there. So we'll just give it a couple more minutes and we'll see if Kathy joins us. And again, if you've got any questions, pop them in the chat. If you just want to say hi, let us know where in the world you're joining us from this evening. That'll be great. So Kathy's internet does go in and out sometimes. So she's just hoping that it's gonna pop back on any moment and she'll be with us. I'm not sure whether the chat's enabled. I'm not seeing anything come in there. So if you can put something in the chat, then do so. Let me know where you are in the world, any questions you might have. There's also the Q&A function, which again, Kathy would usually be hosting this. So I don't fully know what the parameters are she set up. If you can put a question in there or something in the chat, that would be great. Okay, well, I'm guessing you can't write anything. Either that or we're not feeling overly talkative this evening. One of the two. That's okay. We'll just keep rolling for a couple more minutes and see whether Kathy manages to get with us. Aha, here she is. And my dog is so excited that she's here, he's decided to bark to welcome her. You're back.
Hello, hi everybody. I'm so sorry I'm late, and what a blessing that the internet crash happened with you, Jake, because I knew you'd be able to deal with it.
Well, I was just freewheeling a little bit and asking people to share where they joining us from in the chat and the Q&A, but they haven't done that. I don't know whether there's some parameters around who's allowed to post in the chat or Q&A, or whether people are just I don't know, cooking their dinner or something, or having
Might be. Probably people are driving or whatnot. Well, why don't I give you a little bit of an intro for those people that might be watching this webinar a little bit down the track. And because we are here at IMCO, we are really thrilled to have Jake here and talking about this subject, which is just so cutting edge. You know, it is leading edge on knowledge around human health. And so very exciting. And so for those, have you done a little bit of an overview of who you are, Jake, yet? I don't want to repeat things.
I have just talked about that I'm a primal health coach, married to a midwife. So as well as being a health coach, I have an insight. I did mention that Freya has a proclivity for mentioning placentas at the dinner table and things like that. So I get the benefit of real inside information when it comes to all things midwifery, alongside the kind of bigger picture of human health.
Yeah, you do. You've got, and of course you do, you know, you're very much involved with the antenatal classes as well. So, yeah, well, I guess, you know, one of the things that's so, you know, trendy, but also stuff that everybody's a little bit curious about, but not very knowledgeable about, I guess, is, you know, is ancestral health, you know, and primal lifestyle. Do you want to give a bit of an overview of what that's all about?
Yeah, it's interesting because you kind of say it's cutting edge, and in many ways it is. It's really keeping up with current science, but at the same time, it's ancestral. So we're digging back in time, and in many ways, we're winding back the clock and doing a little bit of what our grandparents may have been doing, but also winding back the clock further and thinking, okay, evolution is this great container of a theory that a lot of other theories slot into really well, and it holds water. Other things, when we put them into the kind of box of evolution, I guess it's kind of a meta theory that has a lot of other theories contained within it. They make sense, and that's true of human health as well. And we're discovering more and more now that we're not a pre-coded set of genes where we inherit things from our parents and that is what's going to happen to us, but rather, I don't know, you've had epigeneticists talking on these in the past, talking about how those genes can be turned on and off. There's environmental factors that literally switch genes in and off, and that thinking that they are more switches. And how is it that we've evolved? What were the environmental conditions that switch genes off in terms of our evolution? And just how quickly we're moving now as human beings, and as we craft society, as we craft our homes, as we craft our families, and are our genes still getting what they are expecting? And by and large, the answer to that question is becoming more and more no. So in terms of the foods that we eat, the movement patterns that we engage in or perhaps don't engage in, the amount of sunlight that we're getting, the amount of play that we're doing, how much we're in contact with the earth, all of these things are really getting disrupted. And I think we're seeing the effect of that. And we're seeing that play out in chronic disease levels. So we're seeing heart disease skyrocket, type 2 diabetes skyrocket, different forms of cancer skyrocket. And so many of these can be traced to our lifestyle. And a lot of people think, it's just environmental toxins, or maybe it's just the lack of exercise, or maybe it's just the substandard food, or maybe it's just one of those things. It's like a kind of drift, and our genes are messed up somehow now. Whereas when people start entertaining a primal lifestyle, so looking at cues from our ancestors, they start shifting into health very quickly. I had a message today from a client I've been working with for 3 weeks. And she said, already I'm noticing a big difference in terms of what my health is doing. I had a guy on my 21-day program saying, I've gone to the doctor and I've told him I'm coming off my antidepressants. I don't need them anymore. And we were like, I don't know, 10 days in. And he felt different because we'd been working on him getting the cues that his genes were expecting.
It is so fascinating. And oh yeah, sorry, I thought something went funny with the internet again. But yeah, it is so fascinating because you know, we know, like through the whole COVID experience, it became pretty obvious that even that tiniest entity evolves.
Yeah, and very quickly.
Right? You know, really quickly, right? And why on earth is it that, you know, viruses and bacteria, we as human beings completely accept the idea that they evolve and they change, and yet we haven't? Like, that's it. We are fully evolved, nothing more changes. We're now human beings, and that's it. Of course, you know, like, which is crazy. So of course there's still a physical evolution going on within our bodies. If there is with a virus or an amoeba or a bacteria, why would there not be with us? Another
it's really interesting because people kind of swing both ways, I think, on that one. People kind of go, oh yeah, we are set and that's just it. But I think also the other thing is true of people are, well, you know, we will evolve to these conditions and not recognize that something as big as a human takes a long time to shift. You know, viruses, they're single-celled, and they can shift very, very quickly. Something like a human organism takes time. So people think, oh, you know, we'll catch up to the food that we're giving ourselves. We can put this ultra processed food into ourselves, and you know, I've had it, so my kids will adapt, right? No, because it took a long time to get to that genetic point. And sure, we will adapt, we will move down the line, and you can see little changes within populations. Like, you know, if you've got Scandinavian genes or Ethiopian genes, then you're more likely to be able to digest milk products, and if not, then you're not as likely to. But for the main part, humans aren't going to adapt very quickly to something that has come onto the scene, you know, post World War II, which we're seeing in terms of our hyper processed grains, refined sugars, and kind of low grade cooking oils.
Yeah. So what do you think are the most significant deviations that we are, you know, commonly, you know, living away from what our bodies were born expecting?
Sure. So number one, and this is where I start with everyone, is food. So if we're saying that the external environment kind of affecting our genes and turning them on and off is what's going on, and that's, if we steward that, then we're going to head in the right direction. We're going to honor the way that we've evolved. The food that we eat is taking the external environment and shoving it inside ourselves. So that's going to have the most visceral effect. And our ancestors would have been hunter-gatherers, so they would have been eating plants and animals. Real basic. We eat some plants and animals, and then we a load of stuff on top of that, which is perhaps, derived from plants and animals, but it certainly isn't plants and animals. I mean, you get something out of a plastic blue packet that's been transported across the world. It's got 30, 40 different ingredients on the back of them, some of which you can't even pronounce. That is not what our genes are expecting. Our genes are expecting something that we could have gleaned from the forest, from the pasture, and something that we could hunt. And even some of the things that we would say, okay, that's a plant, are not things that we evolved alongside. So for instance, grains, we did not evolve alongside. They've only been in our diet for the last 10,000 years, developed in the Fertile Crescent. And actually our age dropped massively. The average human age dropped massively when we started eating grains. So one of the big things I have clients do is shift away from a grain dependency. And obviously, you know, if you think about what you eat in a day, usually you're probably starting the day with some cereal, some porridge, some toast, maybe having a sandwich at lunchtime. In the evening, people could be having spaghetti bolognese or a pasta dish, and it's grain. And it's offensive to our body, and our bodies just do not cope well with grains. It causes a heck load of inflammation, and we know that inflammation is really the kind of underlying factor behind so many of the diseases that we now experience, and we've come to think of as kind of rudimentary as we age. And there's this term now, inflammaging, that you just get old and you get inflammation. That's what happens, right? And then you pop some pills, and that's kind of the expectation we set ourselves up for. So food is the big one, and transitioning back to the basics, transitioning back to the things that you could glean. And the big three that I advocate for removing is removing grains, or at least, kind of massively limiting the amount of grains in our diet, getting rid of processed oils. So we're thinking about canola oil, vegetable oil, soybean oil, kind of fry light sprays, all those kind of things, and opting to cook things in animal fats or coconut oil, avocado oil. And then to get rid of the refined sugars. Now, obviously,
can I ask you where are you on olive oil then? Because of course that's a real
problem. So olive oil is a lot easier to extract. It's a great monounsaturated fat. So olive oil is brilliant. Just don't cook with it. It can't cope with the high temperatures. But olive oil is brilliant. Yeah, I should have included that one. Thanks for reminding me.
Okay. So obviously olive oil, over your salad, fantastic. Olive oil in your fry pan, no.
Yeah, you're just going to smoke yourself out, and it doesn't taste nice once it's been cooked anyway. So getting rid of those, and then the refined sugar.
Which oil would you be using to cook your meat with?
So I mean, most meat will cook just in its own fat quite well, but if you need to layer a pan with something, then I mean, avocado is probably the best thing to shoot for. But if you need a good budget to be cooking a lot of stuff in avocado, so then I would shoot for coconut oil, which can smoke if you go too high, but I tend to cook meat on quite a low setting anyway, and would go for slow cooked rather than fast cooked, because that's got health benefits to it as well, which that's probably getting into some minutia that we don't need to. But if you've got a slow cooker and you can do meat in there, I recommend it. It tastes better, and it's better for you.
Fascinating. So how does this did you cover those main ones? So it's the oil.
So they're the big things in food. The other big things is moving regularly. Our ancestors would have been on the move constantly, and we typically are not. People are doing desk jobs, they're sat there for 8 hours a day, and again, the remedy to that is just to get up and move regularly. You don't have to be a gym rat, you don't have to be an athlete, but you do need to move regularly. So I'm now sat on the floor on a yoga cushion, and I've moved my legs about 5 times since we've been talking, just into a different position. When I'm working during the day, every 25 minutes, a timer gets up, I get up and I do a small workout. And that could be crawling around the living room. It could be jumping on my pull-up bar. It could be doing some squats, could be doing some yoga. I just keep moving. And I love the gym thing as well. I love sports, but it's not about that intensity of training, but it's about moving regularly. Our body and our genes are expecting lots of movement. So that's a big one as well. They're expecting the occasional lifting of heavy things, like moving some rocks, or moving some tree stumps to build a house. So sure, get out, get some deadlifting, get some squats, get some pull-ups in. All that kind of stuff is great for us. We don't need to overtrain. We don't need to be on an elliptical trainer 5 times a week, but we do need to regularly be moving our body. The other things then that kind of go alongside those are really slowing our life down. I always hear you talk about women going up till the kind of nth hour before they go off for maternity leave, and like, what are you doing? Why are you still working? Stop it. And that's true for humans in general. Is people are overworked. The sociologists of the 40s were like, wow, technology is coming in. What's everyone going to do with their time? And now it's like, oh, you're going to work more because you've got a mobile phone, so you can pick up the phone any time of day. We need to slow life down. That gives us more time to be outside, gives us more time to garden, be in contact with the soil, to align our circadian rhythm. You'll see I've got orange lights on here because it's 8:20 in the evening. I'm winding down for the evening so that I sleep well. So we're just aligning ourselves back with our ancestors' rhythms, with earth rhythms. And we could go into the minutiae of all that, but that's the basic gist of it. It is the food and exercise piece, but it kind of comes in that wider container of honoring sunlight, honoring natural rhythms, honoring the fact that we need to be in contact with the ground, honoring social relationships, playing board games with each other rather than turning on the TV and assaulting ourselves with blue light at the night. And we can dive into some more of that stuff as you see appropriate. But I'll stop for now, and you can
No,
pick away at
that's
how
a
to pick
great
away at.
overview. So yeah, I mean, it comes down to, yeah, I love it. It's great. So how does this all play out in that maternity, you know, pregnancy, birth, parenting, a newborn kind of perspective? Because obviously, women, even with the most anal minded, should I say, you know, when everything's planned and, you know, and they're trying to do everything perfect. And even in those situations, this is kind of new information to sort of work in with everything else that you're trying to accomplish and pregnancy. And often, you know, I do see for some women, especially first babies, that their pregnancy becomes just another project that they're managing in their life. You know, they're managing that work thing that they're doing, and they're managing decorating the baby's room, and they're managing their pregnancy. Yeah, so it all becomes potentially a little bit overly anal. But I guess, you know, if you're going to take those fundamentals and insert them into the maternity journey, what are the things that I guess that a lot of women are actually perhaps instinctively doing quite well, or the things that just scream out at you all the time, like, you don't want to be doing that, especially when you're growing another human being.
Yeah. And I think a lot of this, it kind of, by the time you get to pregnancy and you're trying to put some, you know, the right health things in because there's a baby on board. Freya and I, we talk a lot about, you know, people think about that during that period, but don't necessarily think about it beforehand. And I think that's the key, is if you put this stuff into place beforehand, you haven't got the stress of making those changes during pregnancy. And kind of going, oh my goodness, I've got to get rid of this from my cupboard, and I've got to add this in. And so I advise everyone start working this in ASAP. If you want to get pregnant, then having a lower inflammation state in your body is going to be beneficial. You know, that's for guys and girls, is take the stress off your body. It's going to perform better in all sorts of ways, and it's going to be more enjoyable. But then during the pregnancy journey, if you're already there, it's do what you can to shoot in the right direction with these things. The last thing you need is to stress yourself out and feel more guilty. You know, adding the mental stress is going to be as bad as having grains in your diet. So if you're freaking out going, oh my goodness, I've got to get rid of all of those grains from my diet because I know that that's going to put my glucose levels up, and then I'm at increased risk of gestational diabetes, which a lot of people are. We're seeing a lot of people coming now, and Freya and I are going to talk about that in a couple of weeks' time specifically. You know, we're seeing that. We're seeing people with preeclampsia, and that's because their blood pressure is already high. You know, and then it sneaks up that little bit more. So it's bringing that down. But if you're freaking out about it, it's kind of taking a back step and go, okay, what can I do? If I'm freaking out and going, okay, I can't remove grains from my diet, that feels like a big step. All right, could we switch to coconut oil? Okay, brilliant. And then what happens? This is what I found working with my clients. I know my colleagues have the same, is that when you make those small changes, you find more energy. Your body has more energy when it has less inflammation. Inflammation is a bit like static. Everything just kind of doesn't work properly when you've got it. So you drop the inflammation out, you have a bit more energy. And when you've got a bit more energy, you can make more change. That is the significant factor I find, is that if you're low energy and you're stressed out, it's difficult to affect change. So you find the small wins. It's going for the low hanging fruit. Now, for some people, that might be moving more. They go, oh, actually, I could do that. Okay, brilliant. Get up every 25 minutes and move from your desk. It could be, I'm going to get outside for 20 minutes in the middle of the day and get some sunshine, get my vitamin D, get my circadian clock aligned. Therefore, I'm going to get better sleep. I'm going to wake up refreshed. Then I feel like I've got the energy to clear out my cupboards and get rid of some grains and take a look on the internet and go, you know, what are some one-pot recipes just containing meat and veg? Oh, okay, great. I can do that. So it's, what is your low-hanging fruit within the kind of stuff I've just said, or even just the stuff that you already know is a good idea. You know, most people know what they can be doing to shoot in the right direction. It's picking one, two, three things that they can start with and then moving in that direction. And you asked specifically about the pregnancy kind of journey and early parenting. when people put primal lifestyle into, or ancestral health into practice during the pregnancy journey and during early parenting, they find that everything else starts to regulate a bit better. Now, it's not going to fix everything. It's not a magic bullet. You know, life still happens, and there are curveballs that are still going to get thrown at us. But if we can steward our environment to the best of our ability, then we're going to avoid some of the pitfalls. So just thinking about, you know, something like flexibility of the hips and pelvic floor health. If you're regularly doing a very primal movement like squatting, so if you go out to, I spent a lot of time in Southeast Asia, everybody sits in a full squat. It's their rest position. They birth pretty easily out there on the whole. And, you know, squat position is a good position for birthing in, or, you know, being on your back. And, you know, I know the whole thing of being put in stirrups. You know, you're basically doing a lying down squat. It's not the best place to be in, sure, but it's mimicking that squat position. But, you know, if you've got good squat, you have got a good pelvic floor, and you don't need to do Kegel exercises, because you will be doing it with a squat. You'll be doing it a lot more naturally. So in terms of kind of post-birth, if you can keep those squats up, you know, through pregnancy, it's a perfectly safe exercise to keep doing. There's no twist in there. You're not going to force baby into a strange position. You're going to keep your strength up. And that means, as a parent, straight away, you're better set to best serve your child, because you're fitter, you're healthier, you can still get down into that position. And you're going to have the energy levels that you need to parent well, or certainly to parent better than you would be if you don't have the great energy levels. And this always blows my mind, is when people make a transition to primal living, they look back and go, oh my goodness, how did I cope before? I didn't have those energy levels. I can't believe how I was living. But people don't have a yardstick to compare this to. And, you know, clients, just through dropping out the grains, the oils, and refined sugars, they've got their wedding rings falling off their fingers because their inflammation's that much lower. You think that's what's going on out here. What's going on down in your pelvic region? What's going on in your reproductive organs? What's happening in the kind of lining of your womb, where there's kind of this great inflammatory process that's going on as a protective measure for you and for baby? But what is on top of that that's then causing you pain, agitation, restlessness, overheating, all of those things? So you're kind of taking out the crap of everyday life, as it were, resetting yourself to what our ancestors may have kind of stewarded their environment. And then you've kind of got the things that are built in as protective and good processes that are able to kind of go through their natural progression without being overly done by the kind of craziness of life that we have. So in terms of a container, which again, having that container of evolutionary biology, sitting the birth journey within that and parenting journey within that, you've got something which is taking the rest of the stress off, so that the appropriate stress of pregnancy, of labor and birth, and early parenting are kind of as they're meant to be. You know, they're appropriate stressors rather than on top of all of the inappropriate stress, which is already funking people up.
Yeah, and that stress thing is such a big thing. And we certainly see, as an example, on the Facebook forum, Ask the Maternity Gurus, which a few of us are involved with, you know, one of the super commonest thing that women will say in their comment is that I'm so worried about, or, you know, I'm feeling very anxious on, or I'm super stressed on this. I've got fears around that, and there's so much mental game going on, particularly, I'd have to say, in the first trimester. And, you know, we know stress is bad for pregnancy. We know that. So, you know, like, and that's where it's that balance thing, isn't it? That there's, you know, like, I would prefer that the you know, woman may eat, you know, let's say things like sushi or something, where somebody's like, oh, I can't eat sushi because, you know, they say that sushi is bad, and that it could be unfresh and it shouldn't be. And I'm like, well, okay, hold on. Well, forgetting about the particular diet we're talking here, but just an example. Well, if sushi's full of vegetables and there's no raw salmon in it, then you're not going to get food poisoning. So that becomes health. And like they'll be so stressing on, you know, and you're like, don't stress about the sushi. If you're stressed about the sushi, just don't eat the sushi, you know. Don't have the stress and don't eat it. And, you know, it's like they'll focus on things and work. Or another thing that will happen is people will say, I have done blah, 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 and I've just read on Google that that's not good for the pregnancy. Oh my God, I'm so worried. And you have to go, please don't be worried. Like the worry is so much worse than what you just did.
Exactly.
And, you know,
And,
because,
and people are really kind of past orientated there, aren't they? The thing
yes,
to do in that scenario is, okay, I've learned that information now. I'm going to do something different.
exactly. And what do we, you know, when somebody, look, I mean, 50% of pregnancies are unplanned. So, you know, it's pretty common that women find out they're pregnant and go, oh, you know, 3 weeks ago, I was seriously partying, you know, that was a big night, you know, and it, you know, that happened to me with my second pregnancy. Didn't know. And you know, so and you have to think, well, so you're worried that you know, you just did this, but actually there's some women who come into pregnancy knowing that they've done a whole lot of things in their early pregnancy that wasn't ideal for the pregnancy.
Yeah, and Freya always says,
You know,
like,
we just, you know, what are we going to do? So, you know, I like people like, oh, you know, I've taken this or I've done that, and you know, now I'm 7 weeks pregnant, and I'm so worried about the baby who's, you know, the size of a grain of rice at that stage. So it's still got a lot of, you know, evolutionary involvement and growing to do, where you can give fantastic influence. But what are you going to do? Okay, so, you know, worst case scenario or something, you know, you had a really drunk night and you took ecstasy, and that was at the beginning of the pregnancy. Okay, and now you're 7 weeks pregnant with a baby that's the size of a grain of rice. What are you going to do about it? Are you going to terminate the pregnancy because you took an ecstasy pill?
yeah,
No, you're not going to terminate the pregnancy.
exactly.
You realize that this thing is the size of a grain of rice, and you have got the whole rest of your pregnancy to help it through. And yeah, so but if
and you know, during that time of going on a bender, you may have been turning genes in the wrong direction for that baby. So now spend the rest of your pregnancy turning genes in the right direction. You know, those aren't set in that way. You know, Freya always says, if you're this particular kind of alcohol in pregnancy, if you're swimming with sharks, what do? You get out of the water. Like, okay, you were swimming with sharks when you did that. You didn't necessarily know. Someone went, there's a shark in that water. You get out. You then don't feel guilty about it. You don't need to. You've learned some information now. You're on the right track. Put the right things in place. What's happened has happened. Let it go. And I think one thing that I say to a lot of my clients is, you know, they will say, oh, I've fallen off the wagon. I've not been eating supportively, this, that, and the other. They start beating themselves up. And I say, well, if a friend came to you, what advice would you give them? Would you say, oh yeah, you're really lousy. You've really screwed up. You should feel guilty about the decisions you've made. You wouldn't say that.
yeah.
But we're
So
so
why
good.
are you saying it to yourself?
Exactly. And like you say, when we say that to ourselves, that just kicks our stress hormones in. Our cortisol goes through the roof. And, you know, so we've got to get the mental and the physical piece right to bring the stress off the body. So lowering the inflammatory foods takes the stress off the body, but our thought process can massively do that as well. So it's finding somewhere that you're happy to shoot for. And research shows that when you make an informed decision and you're moving in the right way, almost the kind of mental piece there and the health and well-being, you're better served from being autonomous and having freedom and feeling like you're not restricted, but feeling like you're doing your best, then you get the best outcomes. So whilst I'm a massive advocate of cutting out grains, if a client comes to me and says, well, you know, actually, I think I feel really good on eating porridge oats in the morning, I'm not going to go, you should be cutting that out. Okay. You are the expert for your body. If you're telling me you're tuning in and you feel good on that, go with it. And I think that's often true for mum and baby as well. You are the expert for your baby. You are the expert for your pregnancy. Nobody else is feeling what you're feeling right now. So yes, I think there are some basic principles to be shooting for, but inform yourself, do the best you can, move in the right direction, and don't live with regret. The regret is going to eat you up from the inside out, and your body doesn't know whether that is a kind of mental stress or whether it's a physical stress. So if you're living with regret, it's like walking around with a knife in you. Literally, the cortisol levels, that's what it's like. And that over time is going to be draining for you and, draining for baby in utero. But also once baby's born, if you're carrying all that baggage, you've got to let it go, because you've got to shift into serving that young life now and giving your best. And even if you weren't doing the best throughout pregnancy because it was too stressful, okay, now you feel like you can do it, make those dietary changes, move regularly. I mean, there's a great opportunity, actually. What I always say to parents, I've got a couple of our expecting antenatal classes clients who then transition into my care as a health coach. And I say, do what your baby's doing. If your baby is crawling, you crawl. You move around on the floor with them. It's a great bonding activity and it gets you moving. So if you've got the capacity to do that, now baby's out, just get on with it. Don't lament the stuff. And if you feel like you've got mental barriers around that, prioritize yourself there. Don't kind of wait until they've left home to go and get some counseling, or do a birth debrief. Do everything you need to do to shift the kind of gears mentally for yourself. Because if you do that, you will be a better parent. Prioritize yourself. It's a bit like the whole gas mask thing, If you're on an aeroplane, what do? You put your own gas mask on first, then you stick it on the child. And I say this to parents all the time. If you're just running around after your kids the whole time and not looking after yourself, you're not going to do a good job of parenting. And exactly the same in pregnancy. People can worry about, oh, baby. What about you? What do you need? Baby's living inside of you. Look after yourself and you'll be looking after baby.
Yeah, absolutely. Yep. And yep, because it all just feeds down through that placenta, and your stress levels, I guess what would you say are the commonest let's say the top 3 things or top 5 things or something you would say that women should just always do when they know that they're pregnant, or always not do? What would be your sort of top picks?
So, I mean, there are the basic things that they should be doing anyway, that I guess anyone on here would advocate, like cutting out alcohol, for it, etc. So just from a primal standpoint, with some of the minutiae and some of the, not necessarily minutiae, but some of the things that other people may not present, I would cut out the big 3. I would cut out grains, or at least severely reduce them, get rid of the inflammatory oils, replace them with something else, and limit the sugar. Now, I appreciate the cravings are there, and you may need to kind of troubleshoot those individually. That's where having some health coaching or a good friend who can, bounce ideas around with you is going to be really, really good, to help you get through that. The second one would be to keep moving. Throughout pregnancy, I think so much women kind of get scared about training. Certainly first trimester, you can continue to train as you were, unless you're doing something really crazy. Like some of the martial arts and things where there's potential, stomach trauma and things like that may occur. But in terms of kind of gym, fitness, that sort of stuff, keep doing it. And obviously as movement becomes more restrictive, you've got to move away from those kind of twists back towards center and things. You can still do open twist away from center. But really it's just to keep that everyday movement up, keep walking. We evolved to walk and to run, to move, to squat, to get up and down from the floor. Getting up and down from the floor is a big deal. That's one of the markers of whether people age 50 are still going to be alive by the time they're 60, is how efficiently they can get up and down off the floor. But that all starts earlier on in life. I'm going off track. But for women who are pregnant, just keep moving. Don't be afraid of movement.
And I always sort of the general, when it comes to exercise, the general things that I've sort of tended to traditionally say when women are a little unsure, because some of them can go to the extreme of the gym junkie, where you know, they've got a personal gym instructor who's insisting that, you know, they can be doing the high levels of work that they were doing pre-pregnancy, and that's not true, and that shouldn't be. But I would always say, oh, look, you know, you can't go wrong with gentle walking, gentle swimming, and preggy yoga. They are, to me, they're my three top favorites.
Yeah.
And they sort of talk about some pretty good research has shown that around about 100 minutes a week is pretty optimal during pregnancy. So, and that's a lot less sometimes than some gym junkie women think. They're like, oh my God, I was used to doing, you know, 300 minutes a week. Well, you can dial it down a little bit and make sure that it's gentle. But if you are not, you know, a gym junkie, a bit more of a couch potato, then we'd have to say sort of 100 minutes a week would be minimal. And usually, you know, that's sort of advised to be spread over, you know, spread over 3 or 4 days. But I love what you're talking about of the, you know, 25 minutes at your desk and 5 minutes get up and go for a walk. Because that's really, if that's all that pregnant woman was doing, rather than, you know, driving to the gym and doing the gym and everything else, you know, that's actually probably way better for you, right?
Yeah. Oh yeah. I mean, I would delineate those two things completely. So if you're doing the gym thing, then sure. I mean, 100 minutes is loads. I wouldn't advocate one of my clients who wasn't pregnant lifting weights for that amount of time. A 30-minute session once a week and then a 10 or 20-minute session once a week is absolutely enough. And the other thing I'd be advocating for a normal client is some sprinting and lots of low-level cardio. Now, we're not going to be sprinting you know, into the second and third trimester, but keeping that low-level cardio in there where you're going for a walk and your heart rate is, you know, about 180 minus your age at the top end, not going above that at all. So 180 minus your age. So, you know, for instance, my heart rate wouldn't get over 146 as a 34-year-old. You know, that's my standard training. And for a pregnant woman, keeping it under that, and even shooting a little bit lower, taking that down. So if I were a pregnant woman, which obviously I'm not, then maybe taking it down to somewhere around 130 for.
So again, it comes into that gentle walking, gentle swimming, gentle breath yoga.
Yeah. But then not to be afraid of a good set of squats. And, you know, there doesn't have to be a barbell on your shoulders, but just getting into a nice, deep squat. So that's the second thing, is keep moving. The third thing, I think, so this is something that I work on with all my clients. There's loads of things we could put in, but the third thing is make sure you've got good supportive relationships around you. That cannot be underrated. Yeah, I'm going to encourage people to get out into the sun, you know, never burn. I'm going to encourage people to honor their sleep and nail that. But particularly in this period is build supportive relationships. And I see this through what we do with the antenatal classes, just how important they are, how well bonded people are. We live in a world where we've moved away from our village. And people are fragmented. We don't have the support networks. Some people do, they live close to family. You know, make the most of the family ties around that time, you know, whether it's during the pregnancy time or, you know, postpartum, baby's out and you need a rest. Okay, grandma's there, uncles are there, aunties are there, cousins are there. Great. Make use of them. If they're not, make sure that you are plugged into community. We are created as humans to be able to relate in a way that no other animal can. And even every other animal has some level of kind of familial relationships or bonding, and particularly, you know, the greater apes that we belong to. If you look at them around birth, it's very tactile, it's very village-like. You won't always know which little ape belongs to which, you know, mummy and daddy ape. And that's how we're meant to be as well. And in terms of the bonding of child with mum and dad, but also learning that other people are safe as well, and how that helps with their brain development and how that helps with our brain development as adults as well, of re-engaging with babies, of play. You know, play is so important for us as humans. We continue to learn in that way, and kids bring that out of us as adults. So that's probably the other thing that I would say, particularly during that period. You know, you find out you're pregnant. If you haven't already got a good support base around you, find one. If you've moved country, if you've moved city during that period, join an antenatal course, join a common interest group, whatever that is, go to a church, find people that you've got around you who are going to support you and who you can do life with and bring that child up in relationship. We're starting to see the effects of COVID now, aren't we, on kids, and that time where they didn't have that interaction apart from with mum and dad. And let's learn from that and make sure that we're doing our best to do the opposite of that now that we've got the opportunity to.
Yeah, absolutely. And you're so right, because it's, we just have stepped away from the village, and often for, not even often, I'd say most of the time, the great majority of the time, when a woman has given birth to a baby, it's the first baby she's ever got involved with looking after. And her main birth support person is typically a male partner. Well, he hasn't given birth before, very unlikely. And so what he's your main birth person, but he's never done that. So whereas, not that long ago, less than 100 years ago, it would be unusual for a woman to be going to a birth that hadn't already attended other births. And having been at, she would have been at her big sister's birth, and her mother may have had another baby that she's seen, and she would have assisted at her friends and her cousins, and people were all around that. So the experience of birth was normal, and nobody expected a new mother to be looking after a baby on her own. Never. And we still see this within some of those ethnicities that tend to have more family community around them. So whether they're Chinese or they're Indian, those extended families are there. People grow up with the extended families. Everybody's in there giving a hand. Or we'll see oftentimes in some of those real strong European culture, particularly, say amongst Italian families and Greek families, and they're all in, and everybody's there, and everybody's, but somewhere along the way, particularly dominantly in the old, Anglo-Saxon Caucasian, it's like they're just on their own, and it's not normal, and it's not healthy, and it's really hard work. And so if you are in that situation, as you say, use that pregnancy. So what are you wanting to do in the pregnancy? Well, you want to grow the healthiest possible baby and prepare for the most natural, normal birth, which will be the optimum arrival for that baby. We don't want them yanked out, sucked out, and cut out. That's not optimal arrival for the baby and for the mother. So there's all these things that that you want to be learning about and preparing for. And the other thing you need is company. You need social interaction. You need another pair of hands. So yeah, be using that time in pregnancy for reaching out to find other like-minded people, because you're not alone. I think that's probably the big thing, is that we see it as midwives that there are a lot of people out there who are feeling very lonely through their pregnancy. So maybe stop thinking about the fact that it's helping you, and realize that helping you is potentially helping other people, because they could be just as wrapped, even more wrapped, that you've reached out and connected with them.
Yeah, and I think it's easy to understate just how important this piece is. But you look at the blue zones, you look at the places on Earth where people live longest, happiest, and most fulfilled lives. They all have a tight-knit sense of community. That's one of the defining factors. So in terms of the health piece, it's not just makes you feel cushy and gives you the warm fuzzies. No, you feel good on it because it's literally good for your chemistry. If any feelings you have something going on inside of you, and that is going to trickle down to baby. So like you say, it is that kind of, you're looking after yourself, you're looking after baby, and in that vulnerability, you're looking after other people. I know that Freya will say, the best kind of groups that she has that go through her antenatal course are the ones where somebody is very vulnerable. And then what happens is the floodgates open. And at 2 a.m. in the morning, all the mothers are texting each other, going, oh my goodness, me too. I've got this issue, or this is happening. And they really bond over that. And as human beings, we live in this professional world where everything's got to be really good and everything's on Instagram. But actually, when we're really vulnerable with each other, we create community. It's really good for us. It allows us to offload. If we're, a lot of us are external processors to some degree. If we don't talk it out and we don't have a hug, we don't have a cry, then we miss out on recalibrating what's going on in our nervous system, our hormonal system. And that's going to have a trickle-down effect, whether baby's in utero or on dry land.
Yeah, you make a really good point on that. And it's absolutely true that when you've got when that group of women, particularly, are creating that bond and that friendship through the fact that they're all pregnant or they're all got newborns and whatnot, it is when you see that vulnerable moment when that one woman who looks like she's been holding it together all fantastically and she breaks down in front of everybody and everybody's there for her. It is an incredible bonding moment because she's given you that privilege in a way to see her raw self. And I've still, we're still very good friends with, quite a number of people from our original antenatal groups. And, our eldest are all, 25 now. And so how crazy, that's a quarter of a century. There was I can still remember those moments in time where you were going past those niceties of, making a cup of tea and eating a biscuit, enjoying something, and somebody opens up and, oh my God, it's this amazing bond, and you know that it means that you can do it as well. And
Absolutely.
It may not be your day, that's not the day that you're going to break down because you're okay today, but it might come in the future, and it gives you permission to just be vulnerable. And it is incredibly bonding within that friendship. It is you just know that you're there for each other. And we are digressing and we are progressing on in time here, but it's a lovely type subject for you to mention because it's not something that's mentioned very often, even with us here, with the fact that we focus on holistic, body, mind, spirit type of triadic look of woman and pregnancy and experience and the birth and it all. We know it's a body, mind, essence type of journey for sure, probably the biggest one of those journeys that women go through in their life. But the topic of of reaching out and having those connections and how incredibly valuable that is, it's still not something that's talked much about. We talk about eating well and exercising well and trying not to stress, but it's one of the biggest cures, isn't it? Is for stress and for stress of pregnancy.
Yeah, absolutely. And like I said before, it is that kind of hitting the reset on stress from every angle that we can. And whether that's through the food that's going into our body and thinking, okay, what would my ancestors eat? How would my ancestors move? How would they relate to each other? They're going to be living in a tribe because they wouldn't survive without it. One person versus a saber-toothed tiger equals dead. A whole tribe versus a saber-toothed tiger, yeah, they can outdo the tiger on that.
It's fantastic to have you here, Jake, and a special thanks to Jake as well, because for those of you who may be watching this live or watching this later, Jake is one of the volunteers on our team here at IMCO, at the International Integrative Maternity Healthcare Organisation, and so we always appreciate you and everything that you do. And so is there anything else that you want to wind up with before we come to a conclusion here today?
Yeah, I guess one of the things is just around habit change, that that's the crux of it. Is, I think, there's that saying, isn't there, that if habit change were easy, and information were the thing that we needed to kind of make the changes, then we'd all be billionaires and have six-pack abs. There's so much information out there. Most people know what they need to be doing, but it's building those habits. And if you want to make change but you're struggling, reach out, get some coaching. Find somebody who has got some formal education as a coach. They've got some good reviews, and they're going to be able to take you on a journey, no matter whether they're a primal health coach or whatever they are. Just look for their reviews, make sure they're somebody who you click with, who you feel like is on the same page as you, and get them working with you on habit change. Things like motivational interviewing and some CBT and things like that are great tools for getting needles moving on the bits of health that you want to change. So I would totally recommend, if you find out you're pregnant, or you're partway through your pregnancy, or you're a new parent and you're thinking, how do I set life up well for myself, for my child? How do they move forward well? Invest in some coaching. It's the kind of stuff that can change your life. I see this with my clients, and this isn't just a big plug for me, but a big plug for people who want to change their behavior and optimize.
Basically it's saying, get guidance, right? Yeah, well, we call it coaching, but at the end of the day, it's guidance. Get somebody who knows a bit more than you to teach you the stuff that you don't know.
Yeah, and not just teach, but actually help you get to the place you want to be with that information. So that's what I'd say to people. And if that doesn't feel like a great fit for you, not ready to take the plunge, just look at how you can steward your environment to make those habits easy. If you want to be moving more, just put the things around the house that are going to get you moving more. If you want to be eating better, stick the stuff that you don't want to eat at the back of the cupboard, make it difficult to get to, and put the stuff that's more supportive on the countertop so it's easy to reach for. Steward your environment, and that's easier for your kids then as well when they're here. If the stuff that's staring them in the face is health supportive, they're going to be more inclined to do it.
Fabulous. So just to conclude, for those people, because so those that have registered for this particular webinar, they will receive information automatically within 24 hours of this spot that has your contact details. But for those people who are watching this later, further down the track, do you want to just go over your contact details in case they wish to talk to you, ask any questions?
Yep. So my website is wholelifehealth.uk. So that's just wholelifehealth.uk. And then you can find me on Instagram at Coach Jake Mahal, and shoot me a message on there. If you want to email me, then it's just jake@wholelifehealth.uk. And yeah, we can have a chat. We can jump on a call, see if what I offer is a good fit for you. Or if I'm not a good fit for you, I can signpost you to one of my colleagues who are all around the world and who have different kind of specialisms as well. So my specialism is working with parents. So a lot of the people watching this, I may well be a good fit for. But yeah, I can totally signpost you towards what might be a better fit.
Fantastic. Well, thank you so much. Thank you so much for your time. As always, Jake, always so appreciated. And for running the show on your own there.
Right.
I'm just glad it was you. And if this happens to anybody, they're the perfect person, because I know you're going to cope fine. And thank you to those of you that are tuned in live as well. We always appreciate our live audience, and those of you that may be watching this a little bit later. So we just, here at IMCO, we just want to wish everybody a lovely rest of your day. And yeah, so thank you very much. Okay, bye everybody.
Bye.